Morning and welcome. Today's job, we are going to do some decarbonisation, and what we are going to be trying to do is to remove the Pelnum chamber and try and get some carbon out at the throttle body. You've probably seen my last video where we took this EGR pipe off, which goes into the inlet, and took all the carbon deposits off that. So that led me to think about taking all this off, this Pelnum chamber and the inlet and this, and cleaning it all. So what we've got is the map sensor here, which is usually gunged up a wee bit, and there's another sensor here, and the mass airflow sensor, that's a temperature sensor on that side, and the mass airflow sensor on this side. So we'll get to that. It's just a fairly simple job to take off, although there's a lot of pipe work, and this thing up the back needs to be taken off till we get into this part here. Okay, so we shall take off this panel here to let us into the hoses. Although that's the rain starting. Why is this one not coming up? Now this part here just pops off. There's two grommets here. Pull that up like so, and that exposes this T-piece here. So that's us got this back bit out, just slightly different from your car, and we now need to start disassembling this. Get that out. Taking that out lets us get into these bolts at the back.
There, no? Them there?
Yeah, 1, 2 there on that bracket. So that should lift out of there. If you can see that, quite oily, lots of carbon deposit on that side.
Mother of mercy.
So that's quite bad looking. And have you look in here, there's that light part, and that is oil. Now bearing in mind, that's the pipe we cleaned, that's the EGR return pipe, and we're just back from recording all the parameters when the engine was very, very hot, but that's horrendous. Okay, so we'll continue, take the EGR pipe off, nothing else holding it, there is something, can't feel what it is, just about we have the chamber out. So,
Take your rags.
just having a look in there. Pat will get some rags and we'll just block them up in case anything. That looks fucking horrific.
Just going to have to take them off, Raymond.
Yes. Pure oil, jeez. One there. Pure oily carbon. Now, I'm completely blocked.
With oily carbon.
So I don't think
You've touched the
sides.
You've touched the sides. That's what's wrong there.
So this is the throttle body, all cleaned. No carbon on that. EGR pipe. A couple of other bits of pipe. That's the throttle body inlet. Cleaned that. So it looks pretty clean. And what we're going to do with the inlet Pelnum chamber is this. So I've got this chamber here, and I blocked off the 4 outlets and where the sensor is, and I've filled it up with degreaser. And what I'm going to do is with that hat is we've got a small air line from an aquarium pump with a hose on it and a wee clamp to control air. And what I'm going to do, if I come over here and video that, I'm going to drop that air stone right down to the bottom. That's that at the bottom now, and I'm going to crack that open, let air in there, and now you'll see it starting to bubble. It'll all spill out there a wee bit, but what effectively is happening there is the air's rising up and circulating the fluid or the degreaser round about the Pelnum chamber to try and scour it and take off any of the carbon. Now I'm going to let that run overnight. See it bubbling away there, so it's creating a lift with the air. We'll come back tomorrow and we'll give it a flush out and a clean, and that's how I'm going to try and clean that. Okay, and the bucket's there to contain any spills, but we don't think it's spilling so far. I've just got bits of plastic in there to hold that with the Jubilee clips on it, and we'll leave it at that. So that's us got all the parts decarboned as best we can. The throttle body's done, EGR pipe, Pelnum chamber, and ready to start putting it back together again. So in this car, just out of interest, what's causing the carbon build-up? So we've obviously got the EGR system, exhaust gas recirculation, where exhaust gas is coming back into the inlet here. And this is generally quite dry material, not oily, just as exhaust would be. However, what's causing the oil and the carbon is how the turbos are working. So on this side of the engine here, we've got the variable geometry vane turbo, which is the primary turbo which runs all the time. So the inlet air is coming in here, going down, feeding into the compressor of the turbo, which is then fed back through the intercooler, up through these hoses and into the inlet. And what you tend to find is sometimes you may have oil seeping from the turbo, coming up through the intercoolers and into the inlet. We've also got the PCV as a positive crankcase ventilation coming up. So positive crankcase ventilation will contain diesel particles and oil particles, and it's being fed back into the engine. However, this engine does have an oil separator. Sometimes you would use a catch pot or a catch can to try and catch that. But I think the primary cause of the carbon in this V8 4.4 diesel V8 engine is when the secondary turbo comes on, which is a turbo over on this side. And what happens is, as you get to 3,500 RPM, this intake will open. There's a changeover valve down the bottom. It takes air into that turbo over here, which doesn't get used that often, certainly when you're driving below 2,500 RPM, and there seems to be a lot of oil. So when you put your foot down 2,500 RPM, you've got a puff of smoke out the back, the oil's coming down in through the intercooler, up through this pipe and in here, and that's, for me, that causes probably most of the problems with carbon. And one of the next jobs we're going to be doing is to take off the intercooler and the intercooler pipes, the crossover valve, to see how much oil is in there. There's not much you can do to stop this. I don't think you could blank off the EGR pipe. It would cause too much trouble codes. The engine wouldn't run right. It's not a simple engine like the 3.6 diesel engine or other older L322 versions where you can blank that off and stop that coming back in. But the primary cause of the oil for me is the weeping oil in the turbos. This auxiliary turbo will have an oil feed going in and out, but the turbo's not running, so you may well have a small build-up of oil within that turbo. And as you put your foot down, that oil's puffing out the back, and it's also going into the air intake, or the charged air intake, causing oil to go into the inlet. And as you can see in the inlet here, I don't know how well you can see that, but there is a lot of carbon build-up in that, each of the four air intake or charged air intake inlets. Next thing we're going to do when we put this back together again, we will take it a run, and probably lots of smoke coming out the back of it. We've already recorded the mass airflow pressures and temperatures on our gap tool, so take it a run again, have a look at the numbers to see if there's much of a difference, which I don't think there is. Then once we've done that, we're going to use an inlet injection atomizer to try and get some of the carbon out the inlets. We'll then carry out an oil change for the deposits of carbon that's got into the oil, change the oil change, then we'll test the performance of the car again, and we'll put the gap tool on it, we'll take it a run to see if there's any difference in the mass airflow, temperature and pressure sensors. But meanwhile, we shall now try and rebuild the inlet and put it all back together again and see how that goes. These are pretty tight threads on these. And what I think's happened is there's two here and two in there, and you'll notice I've only put one on that side because it's stripped like the one over there. And what's happened is this part at the bottom, so that part there sits underneath there, and whoever's done that over here, possibly doing the oil cooler, has stripped that and it's come off. And I think that's what's happened in there as well. So for another day I'm going to try and see if I can relocate this. So there's only one bolt on that side and only one bolt on that side, which is not good. As per usual, I've got a bit missing. Now that was there when we took it off. Quick check, it's all on, sensors are on, sensor on. The 4 air intakes are tight, bolts are on the back, they're on. Hose on, nothing else been taken off. So I shall start the engine and see what happens. So, engine starts first time. So, I've got my throttle positioning device. I'm trying to do this with one hand. Device where I can hold the revs. Be going okay. So that's us complete, decab and car's running. However, I think when I take it out for a test drive later on, I will get lots of smoke coming out the back, which is to be expected. And maybe next week I will inject some cleaner into the inlet and I'm going to use this inlet because this is the primary turbo inlet. That's the secondary turbo inlet, and when we run it we'll put it in this, then we'll take it for another run. We will put the gap tool on it, look at all the parameters as we did before, and compare side by side if there's any difference. Don't expect there to be a massive difference, and we'll take it from there. So we're taking the car out for a test drive just after we've decarboned it, just to see if there's any black smoke or anything comes out. So I've got a camera mounted on the back along with the dash cam, and I want to get the engine up to temperature first so it's nice and warm before I take the car up to 2,500 RPM to kick the auxiliary turbo in, and that should give us full power and see if there's any massive amounts of exhaust smoke coming out the back. So we shall take it onto the motorway along the M8 towards Edinburgh, and hopefully the car will have warmed up by the time we get up there. It's starting to warm up now, but we'll see. Car doesn't feel any different. Starts well, it runs fine. It's ticking over just under 1000 RPM, about 700, which is normal. So everything seems normal so far. So let's hope there's nobody behind us and we'll get that usual puff of white smoke or blue smoke coming out the back of a Range Rover as it starts to accelerate, and blind the people behind us. I haven't got the gap tool connected to look at the parameters. I'll do that, I think, once I've ran the car and I have put my atomizer in it to try and clear a lot of the soot and a lot of the carbon out the intake manifold. Then we'll put the atomizing material in there, and I'll make a video of me doing that. And hopefully we may see a difference in the air intake volume, the air intake pressure. Don't expect to see a difference in the air intake temperature because it's always cold here in Scotland. So this is us coming on to M8 Edinburgh. Temperature's just about up so far, so probably take it a mile along the road, nice and easy, till it gets up to temp. There is a car behind me, so I'm going to let her pass so as I don't blind her with smoke. Just checking my other camera's still there. Yes, it is. mph, cruise control on, westward. Boy racer behind us, with his wee mini. I wonder if I can take him. Okay. That's me up to 3,500 RPM. Stayed at 3. Don't see any smoke coming out the back. It's about 90 miles per hour there. Don't tell anybody. Normally when that happens I get a puff of smoke coming out the back of the car. But maybe because it's all clean it's not doing that. So that was me about nearly 3,500 RPM there for a period of time. I'm watching out the back mirror, or the rear view mirror, to see if there's anything, and I don't see anything at all coming out there. Now, we did the same thing with Pat's car about 2 weeks ago. We never videoed that, although we videoed this one. And when he went away, there was lots of white smoke coming out the back of the car. So I expected that to happen to this car. But it didn't. Okay, so we'll head home. Car feels great, feels very responsive, very quick when I put my foot down. Changing nicely in gear. Not any problems at all. But it's a wonder, prior to clearing this out, the Pelnum chamber and the inlet, the car was going fine. Didn't seem to have any problems. Occasional puff of smoke, but maybe it's that placebo effect. We've done that. It feels more responsive, or the way I'm driving it. So